Welcome on board the Leopard 38 with Conch Charters. In this video briefing, we will go through and explain how to use all of the yacht systems and features. You have two Yanmar diesel engines on board, with one located at the stern of each hull. Every day you are requested to perform 4 basic checks on your engines. Do your checks in the morning before you set off for the day, when the engines are not hot. To check the oil level, just like on your car at home, use the oil dipstick, where the end is painted yellow to make it easy to identify. Remove and wipe the dipstick clean. Then reinsert it and check the level. The oil should be between the minimum and maximum lines. Add oil if it is only just above or below the minimum line. Now, to check your coolant level, only do this when your engine is cold. To check the coolant level in the heat exchanger, remove the cap and check to see coolant is visible. The engine also has a coolant expansion bottle located on the forward bulkhead. Check the fluid level in the bottle is between the minimum and maximum lines. To check the belt, move to the aft section of the engine. When checking the belt, ensure there is sufficient tension by giving it a pull and a quarter turn. Also make sure the belt has not become frayed. The engines are cooled by seawater. It is important to always check there is a good flow of water out of the side of each hull after turning the engines on. If you do not have sufficient flow, visually inspect the raw water strainers. Check no debris or seaweed is blocking the flow of water. If you suspect this is the case, please call us for further advice. There is useful information included on the tablet on board, which you can refer to for troubleshooting. If you have any concerns about your engine after completing these checks, please feel free to give us a call. Before starting your engine, look around the vessel to ensure no loose lines are in the water. Also check the throttle lever is in the upright neutral position. First, turn on the engine panel by pressing the bottom right button. Once switched on, you will see the panel illuminate and the engine hours will become visible. Now, hold down the button on the top right of the engine control panel until you hear the engine fire up and you see the RPM rise. If you are unable to start your engine via the engine control panel, a secondary start has been fitted to your engine. As normal, turn on the engine panel by pressing the bottom right button. Then move into the engine bay to press the second start button, which on your vessel is located here on the port side. Press and hold down the button until the engine fires up. Now your engine is running, moving the throttle lever forward or backward will allow you to accelerate forward or go astern. When shifting, pause in the upright neutral position for a moment, as shifting too quickly can cause the engine to stall or damage the transmission. If you wish to charge your batteries from running your engines whilst remaining in the same position, first put the throttle lever in the upright neutral position and then push in the black button to disengage the shifting mechanism. This prevents the propellers from being driven forward or in reverse. With the black buttons pushed in on the throttle levers, move the levers forward until the RPM reaches 1500. This is the optimum RPM for charging your batteries from the engines whilst the shifting mechanism is disengaged. There are 4 warning lights on the engine control panel to be aware of. If a sensor detects an issue, the indicator on the panel will light and an alarm will sound. Under normal operation, these lights should be off. This is the engine low oil pressure indicator, which will activate if the engine oil pressure falls below normal. Shut down the engine to avoid any potential damage if you see this warning. This is the coolant high temperature indicator. Operating at high temperatures exceeding the limit will result in damage and potential engine seizure. If you see this alarm, shut down the engine if it is safe to do so. The water in sail drive indicator and alarm is triggered when water is detected in between the seals of the sail drive. Please check the engine bilge and check for any water ingress. This is the battery low charge indicator, which will come on when batteries are not receiving charge from the alternator. Check the RPM on your engine and then also check your drive belt. Please do not ignore any warning and always feel free to give us a call. To stop your engine, move the throttle lever into the neutral upright position. Push and hold down the stop button until you hear the engine completely stop. You can turn off the engine panel by pressing the bottom right button. Please ensure the panel is turned off, otherwise this will drain your start battery. There are two main electrical panels on board. On the long vertical panel at the top are the 110 volt breakers. Below, on the horizontal panel, are the 12 volt breakers. The appliances on the 110 volt circuit are powered from shore power. The appliances on the 12 volt circuit are powered from your house batteries. At the top of the vertical panel are the 110 volt main breakers. When you board your boat for the first time, the shore power breakers will be in the on position. The voltage gauge at the top indicates that shore power is present and the voltage related to that. This breaker operates your battery charger when 110 volts is present. Like all appliances on the 110 volt vertical panel, this can be energized when connected to shore power. Once 110 volts is present, always activate the battery charger. This will charge your house batteries and engine start batteries. Once turned on, you'll be able to run the appliances on your 12 volt circuit, such as your fridge units, without discharging the batteries. At the bottom of the 110 volt panel are two breakers labelled outlets. With these breakers in the on position, the outlets around the vessel will become live. These outlets are only functional while shore power is connected. The only item you will not require whilst on charter are the water heaters. They should remain in the off position, even whilst on the dock. They are a heavy load item and you will receive plenty of hot water from your engine after just 15 minutes of running time. You can energize the air conditioning units via these breakers. To control the air conditioning units, there are two keypads. These keypads allow you to control the fan speed and the temperature. Please ensure the cool setting is selected for cold air. When powering down the vessel, please note an air conditioning unit is a heavy load item. It is important before leaving the dock or leaving a mooring that the air conditioning is powered down by using the power button on the keypad or by turning them off using the breakers. Now switch off all the 110 volt breakers. Isolate the selection sliding main breakers by moving the breaker to the left. At this stage, disconnect, retrieve and stow the power cables in the cockpit locker. Now that all the 110 volt power has been disconnected from the vessel, these are the procedures should you visit any marina facility and connect to shore power. Switch on the main breakers. You can then proceed to turn on the breakers for the battery charger and the items on the 110 volt circuit as needed. Now we are going to discuss the items on the 12 volt circuit, which are controllable via the 12 volt breakers on the bottom horizontal electrical panel. The 12 volt appliances are powered from your house batteries. To the left of the 12 volt electrical panel, you will notice a voltage meter with a battery test selector. Port engine and starboard engine refer to the engine start batteries, while HSC refers to your house batteries. It is important to monitor the battery voltage, particularly the house batteries. A healthy voltage is between 12.3 and 12.7 volts when not charging. When charging from the battery charger or running your engines, check to confirm the voltage gauge increases above 13 volts. Never allow the voltage for the battery bank to drop below 12 volts, as this will cause serious damage to the batteries. The top breaker switches in the right-hand column refer to nighttime navigation. You are a designated day boat, so although the navigation lights are functional, they should not be required. The anchor light is the captain's choice when on a mooring ball. The cabin lights and salon light breakers control all internal lights in the vessel. Please note there are also individual light switches located throughout the vessel, which look like this. The fans around the vessel will be functional once the fans breaker has been turned on. Please note there are also isolator knobs at the front of each fan which may need turning to run the fan. Refrigeration can be activated from the breaker in the left column of the 12-volt panel. The fridge has a thermostat which is pre-set. Your fridge will draw more power from the house batteries than any other appliance on board. Continuous running will require you to keep an eye on your house battery bank voltage. Some additional charging from the engine may be required, even though you are receiving a trickle charge from the solar panels mounted on the hardtop bimini. We recommend turning off refrigeration before going to bed if you are not connected to shore power in order to conserve the battery charge. Switching on the fresh water pump switch will pressurize the freshwater system on board. When not using fresh water, put the switch in the off position. If your water pump is running constantly, it may be because the water tank is empty. To swap over from one tank to another, you can find the swap over valves located behind this seat. Only have one valve open at a time. There is one valve per tank. This is the valve's open position, where it is in line with the hose, and this is the valve's closed position, where it is at a 90-degree angle to the hose. If your water tanks are not empty, but the water pump is still running, this may be caused by an open faucet. The most common culprit is the stern shower, which is located here. The bilge pumps have float switches which will energize the pump once the water in the bilges rises above a certain level. When the bilge pumps are energized via the float switch, this light will illuminate. If this light does illuminate, inspect the bilges to ensure water is not accumulating. If the float switch is not energizing the pump, you can override the float switch by turning on these breakers. Once this breaker is turned on, you'll be able to run the shower pumps in the heads using the shower drain buttons. Turning on these breakers will provide power to all the helm instruments, including the chart plotter, which may still require turning on at the unit. The solenoid for propane going to oven and stovetop can be controlled by the switch labelled gas valve. When activated, the solenoid will open, allowing the flow of propane from the aluminium tank in the cockpit, supplying gas to the stove. When finished cooking, remember to turn the switch off. You can also isolate and close the tank by turning this valve to further prevent the possibility of a gas leak. After the valve on the top of the tank is open and the gas valve switches are in the on position, light the stove by striking a match and hold the lit match over the stovetop. Then press in the knob and move it to the left. Hold the knob in for several moments after the propane ignites. Wait until the thermocouple heats up. After this, the valve will remain open and you can release the knob and adjust accordingly. To light the oven, like before, strike a match, hold the lit match to the bottom propane outlet. Move the corresponding knob to the left. Again, hold the knob in for several moments after the propane ignites. Wait until the thermocouple heats up. After this, the valve will remain open and you can release the knob and adjust accordingly. To light the grill, carry out the same process but hold the match to the top propane outlet and move the knob to the right. Remember to hold it in like before until the thermocouple heats up. The DC main breaker on the bottom left controls all the breakers on the 12-volt panel. It is an easy way of turning all the appliances on the 12-volt circuit on or off at once. The battery isolators for the 12-volt circuit are located under the galley sink. If you find you do not have power from one of your batteries, check the isolator switches are in the correct position. You would only need to isolate your batteries if there is a fire on board. Each morning when you do your engine checks, please also inspect your bilges to ensure water is not accumulating. As mentioned earlier, you have a bilge pump and a float switch on board, which is located here. If your bilge pump float switch override does not energize the pump, you have a backup manual bilge pump located above the bilge in each hull. You can operate the manual bilge pump by pulling out the handle and moving it in the following motion to drain water from the bilge. In the bilges, you will also find the filters for the air conditioning cooling pumps. In the event an air conditioning unit shuts down unexpectedly, inspect this filter to check it has not become blocked by seaweed or debris. To clean the AC pump filter, first close the seacock. Remove and clean the filter, then refit the filter housing and make sure to reopen the seacock. You have saltwater flushing heads on board. Never put toilet paper, cigarettes, paper towels, hygiene products or anything else down the head that you have not digested first, as this will result in blockages. Please avoid blocking your head as this will incur a fee to resolve the issue. Before using the head, check the holding tank valve. There are 2 holding tanks on board. The holding tank valve on the starboard side is located here, and on the port side, it is located here. Opening the valve for this seacock will empty the holding tank from your toilet on board. Leave this valve closed if you are in a marina, a bay, or if you have crew members swimming around the boat. To open the holding tank valve, move the handle so it is in line with the hose. To close the valve, move the handle so it is at a 90-degree angle to the hose. To operate the toilet, first flip the switch to the wet position and use the hand pump to make sure the bowl has water in it. After use, move the flip switch to dry and pump until the contents of the bowl are low enough for comfort. Flip the switch back to wet and pump for around 15 to 20 strokes. This is to clear the long discharge line between the toilet bowl and the holding tank, which will prevent clogging and also alleviate odour. Doing this will keep your boat smelling as fresh as possible. Ultimately, your holding tank is very good at retaining odour, whereas the hoses from the toilet bowl are not as effective. After flushing, flip the switch back to dry and pump until the bowl is dry. Always leave the bowl empty and on the dry position, particularly when underway, to minimise odour and spillage. When finished, leave the hand pump in the locked position to prevent backfilling. On board, there is a variety of safety equipment you should familiarise yourself with. In the event of an emergency, you can attract attention with flares and an air horn, which are located here. There is also a first aid kit on board, which you will also find here. Life jackets can be found in the following location. There are also fire extinguishers on board, which are located here and here. At the helm are the boat's navigation instruments. Here is the depth gauge. This shows the current depth of water you are currently in. Your boat's draft is 3 foot 7 inches. You also have an autopilot system on board. To engage the autopilot, press the auto button. You will then be able to adjust your course using the +10 or -10, +1 or -1 buttons accordingly. To disengage the autopilot, press standby. The main sheets and the genoa sheets lead back to the cockpit. You can operate the mainsail using the winch located on the mast. Please ensure you never open the spin lock for the genoa halyard. You have a roller furling jib. Operating the jib sheets and roller furling line will allow you to unfurl and furl the sail. Steadily let out the roller furling line located here and bring in the jib sheet to unfurl the sail. Do the reverse to furl the sail away. When furling the sail, bring in the roller furling line and steadily let out the jib sheet. In moderate wind speeds, we recommend furling the headsail downwind instead of upwind. When raising the mainsail via the main halyard, it is easier to put in a reef before raising the sail. Having a crew member at the mast jumping the line will speed up the operation. Your mainsail has a slab reefing system. There are 2 reefing lines. Check the weather forecast and your wind speed instruments to judge how much sail to put out. We recommend putting in reef 1 at around 18 knots to avoid overloading the sail. If weather forecasts indicate sustained wind speeds of 25 knots or greater, reef 2 is required. Before operating the windlass, ensure both engines are turned on. The windlass is a high load item. You may need to increase the engine's RPM in neutral with the shifting mechanism disengaged, as discussed in depth during Chapter 1. To operate the windlass, use the remote control out of the bow locker, which is located here. There are 2 buttons for moving the chain up and down. The anchor is predominantly attached to chain, which is made off to a secured bitter end. When dropping your anchor, please check your depth and your surroundings and adhere to the 5:1 chain to depth ratio. You can judge the length of chain put out by looking at how many boat lengths you have drifted away from where you dropped the anchor. For example, if you're in 10 feet of water, which would equate to 50 foot of chain, you should be just over 1 1/3 boat lengths away. Once you see that your anchor is holding, you can attach the snubbing line, which is located here. Put the hook through the anchor chain. Once attached, release the chain steadily so that the snubbing line takes all the tension away from the windlass. The snubbing line is much better at absorbing shocks from changing winds and waves, which protects your windlass. If the windlass is not functioning, one of the first things to check is the circuit breaker. It is located under the galley sink. Move the breaker down and up again to reset it. In the event of an emergency, you can release your anchor using the manual free fall function. Take the handle provided and undo the nut on the top of the windlass. This releases the gypsy, allowing the windlass to freewheel. On board you have 2 fuel tanks which hold 79 gallons of diesel in total. Your boat has already been fully fueled before your charter. We strongly recommend recording a log of your engine hours to track your fuel consumption. Assume your engines will consume between 0.9 gallons and 1 gallon per hour. Please look to refuel well in advance of when you anticipate running low on fuel. When you return to base, we will refuel your boat for you. If you need to refuel whilst on charter, refueling destinations are discussed during your chart brief. To fill your fuel tank, the diesel fill cap, which is painted red, is located here. On board, you have multiple water tanks holding 164 gallons of water in total. Locations where you can refill your water tanks are discussed during your chart brief. You can fill your water tanks by opening the bow lockers and removing the caps on the top of the water tanks to fill with a hose. Make sure you top off your water tanks before leaving Conch Charters using the hoses on our docks. On board, there are also electric dinghy davits powered from your house batteries. The button to operate the dinghy davits is located here. When raising the dinghy, ensure all crew members have stepped off the dinghy and that no hands or arms get caught in between the rising davits and the metal coach roof supports. If the davits are not functioning, first check the circuit breaker, which is located here, as it may have tripped and needs to be reset. Before you depart Conch Charters docks, you are required to complete an inventory sheet confirming the equipment on board. You will find many of the outdoor items on this sheet, such as deck brush, bucket, cockpit cushions, etc., in this cockpit locker. If you have any questions about your boat, please feel free to get in touch and we'll be more than happy to help. We hope you have an excellent charter and a fantastic vacation. Thank you very much for choosing to sail with Conch Charters.